and how you became a PA.
Sure. So my name is Kristin Burton. I graduated from PA school in 2016. I went to Butler University, which is a private university. I started my undergrad sort of I knew I would go to grad school. I knew it would probably be in the healthcare space. I considered like optometry, physical therapy, medical school, PA school, all those things. And essentially, like, my undergrad counselor talked me into PA. Really, I wasn't as familiar with it as I probably should have been when I made the decision to go for it. But about maybe sophomore, junior year, I decided to pursue the PA path. So I spent the kind of last half of undergrad working towards getting all the mini admission requirement boxes checked off. And then I again went to Butler in Indianapolis. So I graduated in 2016. I've worked a couple of different places. I spent a decent amount of time doing cardiology, which was mostly inpatient, a lot of structural heart disease. And now I'm currently working in pulmonary critical care. I work night shift, which is a little bit different. So I'm full-time nights. So it ends up being a lot of critical care and just a little bit of pulmonology.
You're like doing real medicine. I feel like what I do is fake medicine. So you are in there. So that's interesting. What made you choose to work nights?
So I never thought I would work nights, actually. I did like some rotation night shifts, and I was like, I'm never working nights again. And then I heard about this job. It was at the same hospital that I was doing cardiology at, and it's 7 on, so like 7 12-hour shifts on nights, and then 14 days off. So I was like, gosh, that's a lot of time off. I could pursue like so many different things. So I ended up electing to be full-time nights simply because I could not resist taking that schedule, honestly.
Oh my gosh, that's really cool. So so you'll work 7 nights on, and then you have 2 weeks off, and then 7 nights on. So essentially you end up working 2 weeks a month, right?
Yeah. So I calculated it out. I work 17.3 weeks a year.
Oh my gosh. That is crazy. I need to like my husband, he works 7 on, 7 off. But but it's days and like every other week.
Right.
And then twice a year he gets a week off where he'll just be off for 3 weeks, and neither of us know what to do with ourselves because I'm like, you gotta go back to work. No, I'm just kidding. But it's just crazy. Like, it's such an interesting schedule, but that's awesome. So do you switch back to days when you're off?
I do. So my husband works like a regular 9-to-5 job. So when I'm off, I go completely to his schedule. I go to bed at like 9 and get up at 5 like a regular person. So it works out because, 2/3 of the time I'm on like a regular day shift schedule, and I feel like I can do like normal things during the day. So
that is awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. I mean, cool jobs are out there, y'all. Right. And that's whenever this airs, we'll probably have already done your day in the life, which I'll post on the podcast in the future for anyone who didn't get to come, but I'm excited to hear more about what that's like too. So, but
it's a cool job, honestly.
Yes. And I mean, so, since we're going to hear about that later, I do want to talk a lot about finances, money. This is the stuff that I feel like, okay, so it's like everyone wants to talk about money and finances, but then nobody wants to talk about it too. And it's almost like a taboo thing, but then it shouldn't be. I don't know why that is necessarily the case, but I want to hear kind of how you got into like an interest in money and finances and what that journey's been like.
Yeah. So my whole kind of financial journey was really actually driven by PA school. The average cost is like almost $100,000. So we're all kind of going through the same process when all of us decide to go to PA school. But like you said, really no one talks about it. It's fairly sort of taboo. So when I went to go to PA school, I was like, you know what? I want to go to this program. It's a great program, and that's it. I didn't, it was like, as long as I get in, that's the end of the story. I gave zero consideration to the cost of tuition or any of those things. I didn't look for any scholarships. I mean, because of a whole bunch of nuances of my program, a lot of my student loans were private, which I didn't even really care about or realize that that was bad at the time. So I finished PA school with $161,000 in student loan debt, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I get my first job and I'm like, I'm going to be rich, right? Like I have this salary, we're happy for it, this is going great. And then I tally up my student loans, which unfortunately I hadn't even done yet, realize the amount, find out that my minimum payment is going to be like $2,000 a month for the next decade. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. So I realized I would need to make a new plan and essentially decided to just dive into the realm of personal finance. So I started like doing podcasts and books and getting in these little communities on social media and just like learning everything that I possibly could, literally to get myself out of the massive hole that I had created. So I, do that, and I realized that, PAs make good money, but I'm like, this process is still going to be way too long if I just take my paycheck and then pay off these loans. So I was like, I'm just going to work. Like, I'm going to get all these PRN jobs, and I'm going to work all these hours, and I'm just going to do this. So I did. I think at one point, I had 4 PRNs in a primary job, or it might have been 3 in a primary job. Regardless, I just worked like nobody's business. I put in like minimum 80 hours a week and ended up paying off the whole $161,000 in 16 months.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. So just so people have a comparison. So Butler's private.
Yes.
Okay. So I went to a public school.
Okay.
And that's where I do think like my parents were both teachers. I think they raised me to I don't think I had a full understanding of money that I do as an adult. Like I did not realize, how much vacations cost or how much, I went to a public undergrad, and Georgia has a really great program. So my full tuition and most of my fees were covered. So my parents helped me a little bit with stuff then, but they sacrificed to do that, which I did not realize at the time, and I've since thanked them for. But when I was choosing PA schools, I had the choice between a private school that started sooner and I would have graduated a little bit sooner, or the school I went to where it was public and I was able to live at home part of the time. And my loans would have been probably 3 to 4 times as much if I went to that private school. But I would have done it if I had to. Like if I hadn't gone into the public school, that's what I was going to do. But I came out with... I think my loans were between $45,000 and $50,000 at the time I graduated, which is nothing compared to what a lot of people have. But by the time I paid it back, which people don't realize, you're accruing interest the whole time during school. So by the time that 45 I had taken had accrued interest and continued accruing interest, I ended up paying back about $75,000. And I did that in around... I think once I actually started working on it and paying it back, it was a little over 10 months. So your number blows mine out of the water. That's wild.
I mean, that's still lightning speed. Most people honestly just take the full term and don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It's that's common, but the easiest way to convince someone not to do that is to have them plug their loans into a calculator to tell you the total amount that you're going to pay back if you take the whole term, and you'll go, okay, this is ridiculous.
See, that's what I was going to ask you. How much would you have had? How much would that have been if you just paid that the whole time?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. At one point I calculated it and it was almost 6 figures, but it's because almost all mine were private, and my interest rates were atrocious. I'm talking 9, 10, 11%.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And I willingly signed up for these without really thinking too much about it. And then you just don't realize how big of a deal the interest rate is and all that when you're going through the process.
Yeah.
I think that most PAs, you're I want to get into a program, laser focus on the goal. And then you just sort of put the financial aspects maybe on the back burner.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I think I only had federal ones and the rate was around between 6 and 7%. But I remember looking one day, and I didn't look at my loans till the end. Like, I did not look at them till my last semester. And I was like, I wonder how much money I owe. That's so dumb. But anyway, I looked it because I couldn't pay it. Like, it wasn't like I could do anything about it. But I remember looking, and at one point I was accruing like interest of $50 a day. Like, my loans were, and I know numbers are higher than that, but I was looking, I was like, oh my gosh, to me, when I did look at it, it just felt like this huge weight that I wanted gone. Like, I could feel those loans like weighing down on me, and I was just, they gotta go. Like, I wasn't okay with that. And you mentioned something that I think is a good point, like not applying for scholarships. I didn't look either. I mean, and I think that was such a mistake because they are out there, and there's a good bit of grad schools, particularly for healthcare people, PAs. Like, there's a good amount of scholarships, and so even, I mean, it would have been worth the time. I even graduated a semester early. I had a whole 6 months. I could have been sitting there applying for scholarships, but I didn't, you know? So those are things I think people definitely need to like think about.
Yeah, even if you can't get like a full ride, full tuition scholarship, like those little $1,000, $2,000 scholarships add up, especially when you factor in the interest that you would be paying if it was a loan instead. So like, add those things up, apply for as many as you can. There's more out there than you think, actually. I have this weird like limiting belief in like scholarships don't exist for grad school, which is completely false, and a million people have proved me wrong, and then I got to, reap the benefits of my own mistakes. But yeah,
just a quick Google search will show you there are plenty out there. Okay, so you decided, like, this has got to happen. I got to pay back my loans. I'm going to work like crazy. Paid those off. So are there any, like, throughout that process, were there any like mistakes you made or like things you did to kind of help with your mindset of making that your goal?
Yeah, there were, it's hindsight's always 2020. When I was looking for PRN positions, I think I probably could have optimized that a little bit better. Like subsequently, I found multiple options for PRNs that paid much more than the ones that I had taken. So I think, my progress could have been faster if I would have maybe done some more digging from a PRN perspective. And then I also made the very rookie mistake of not inquiring at the time if my PRN position had tail coverage, which, fortunately I found out retrospectively they did, but that is a huge problem that you need to like for sure look into on the front end. Made that mistake, and only recently did my colleague apply for a PRN and then found out they didn't have tail coverage. I was like, oh my gosh, I never asked that question, we just learned. So those were probably some relatively large mistakes I made along the way. I did do some things that I think really helped me. One thing was I tracked our net worth through the whole process. Your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities, or what you own minus what you owe. And, I was working so hard, and it just felt like I was getting these big paychecks and money was just disappearing. So to track your net worth through that and see with every debt payment, your net worth increases, even though like your savings account doesn't increase. That was really motivating for me. I still remember the day our net worth went from negative to positive, because trust me, we started out like negative 6 figures. So we were like negative. And then, the day that we switched over, we were still in debt. We're still working on it, but it was like big accomplishment. I just felt like, I'm doing good. So
yeah,
that helped a lot. And then I sort of set this big reward at the end. I love to travel. We really want to travel internationally. And at the time, we just completely put that on hold so that we could pay the loans. So we did a big international trip at the end. And I just like, when I was down or whatever during the process, I would like hop on Google or Pinterest and look at all these places and be like, where should we go? Where should we go? And just sort of give myself a pump up with my little reward that I created.
Once you hit that goal, did you quit all your extra jobs?
Not immediately, but probably within 3 months.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly afterwards. And then I went for a long time really without working much extra until right at the tail end of our mortgage payoff journey. I got the bug again, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to put in some hours and I can pull this off. So I worked some extra for a couple months leading up to that. But that was my primary job. I don't have any of those PRN positions anymore.
Gotcha. Okay. Which I want to talk about that too. But because I'm just so impressed. So it's like, so we were saying at the beginning, like I saw you on Instagram because you were doing a live with somebody else, and she was like, "Hey, I'm doing this live. Will you share it?" And I was like, "Wait, like this is really cool, and I want to follow her and talk to her." So, you were like PA financial goals. But I do think like what you've done is impressive, and it's something that like in PA school they don't talk about this. Like I don't remember, the only money talk I remember was I think a bank came at the end of our program and brought us lunch and told us about maybe their like loan refinancing program or something, and like what they were talking about I didn't really understand or know, or really probably even pay attention. Like it wasn't super helpful. It wasn't like, I don't know, just no one really helps you. It's hard.
No. Yeah.
So
honestly, there's very few resources. And then you just sort of graduate and someone pays you and you get a job and then you're like, I'm not sure how to proceed, you know?
Yes.
We had a financial advisor come to our program.
That's who it was.
I remember also getting nothing out of it.
Yes.
Also, like, you just have to remember that the financial advisors make money when you invest money with them. So they're never going to tell you to put all of your money towards your student loans, because then that means you're not investing. So it's a biased opinion. I'm not saying that they're like evil-hearted people. They're not. Right. But it's not the same as your older sister being like, what about this? You know, like there's a motivation for them behind their presentation.
You're right. And that's who came to talk to us too. That's exactly. It was a financial advisor, and they, wanted to help us, but it was over my head. And at that point I had no money. Like I had no reason. I was like, I don't have any money. Like, what do you want? So interesting. Okay. I feel like there's like a million things we could talk about, but anyway, what are some resources for someone? Let's maybe talk different levels, but maybe someone who's in PA school, maybe starting PA school, or kind of in the process, doesn't really have a paycheck. What are some resources or things that they can do to just help them learn about finances and money? And then we can talk more of like a new grad, just starting job kind of spot. And there's probably some crossover, but.
Yeah. So I think while you're in school, the main thing to do is just establish really good baseline habits of like budgeting, tracking expenses, and get a really decent understanding of your student loans. If you want to learn a little bit about just kind of money in general, especially debt payoff, the whole Dave Ramsey group is really good at the debt payoff approach to things. I personally use other resources for investing. I found them to be lacking in that department. But from a pure debt payoff standpoint, you could listen to the Dave Ramsey show, or one of his books would be a great like first money book. They're usually very straightforward. They're written with the understanding that you have no baseline financial knowledge, so you could just pick it up, take a read. I know you're busy, obviously, doing your PA program. But if you have time for a podcast or a book, that'd probably be where I would start. But the thing I would like emphasize so much is just to get in the habit of budgeting. Even though like your income on your budget may literally be your student loans, just the whole process of you getting a sense of like what a month looks like financially, what your expenses look like, not only will it help you when you graduate, but it can also help you map out your student loans. Like if you know, this is what I need each month expense-wise, you can figure out how much, like what student loan amount you need each month, and then multiply that out by the year and make sure that you're not taking out unnecessary loans. So there are multiple reasons why I would start there. But it seems odd, like I don't have an income. What's the point of budgeting? But there's actually like a lot of positives that come out of it.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's a good tip. That's something I didn't do till after I was done with PA school, and because I didn't have like really any income. So once we did have a paycheck, like I remember for an entire year, I tracked our budget. And the first few months, we didn't make any changes. Like I just tracked it. Like whatever we spent money on, I put it in. And then after a few months, I was able to kind of look at it and say like, okay, like we're spending a lot of money at the grocery store. Like maybe we should try to cut that back a little bit, and we could kind of adjust things a little bit. So yeah, I think if for someone who's never done that is really helpful. That's actually something we were talking about. I have a group of girls we do Bible study, and recently we were talking about that because we're all, kind of like in our like early 30s. And it's like a mix of teachers and all kinds of stuff, and they were just talking about how, it's like you don't realize and see like what even comes out of your paycheck. Like you just, like a lot of people just never even look. Like there are taxes and fees and like all like insurance and retirement. Like you have like until you actually look at a paycheck, you don't even see everything that is coming out of it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, honestly, like I'll have no grasp of taxes at all until I got paid, and then I started looking like, wow, this is like huge chunk.
Yeah, yes, it's like a shocker. Like, yeah, you hear these like salary numbers, and then you get your paycheck, and you're like, wait, I think there's a mistake here. Yeah, something's wrong, but yeah, that's part of the game. Okay, let's talk about you paying off your mortgage, which I think is like the coolest thing ever. Wait, how old are you? Can I ask that question?
Yeah, so I'm 29. My husband's 30. We just paid off our mortgage in August of 2020.
That's crazy. So we're like
mortgage-free people. He turned 30 in August, so we're like, we did it by 30, and yeah,
that is wild.
Adventure.
So wait, are y'all like debt-free?
Yes, we are like debt-free. Like our cars are paid for, our house is paid for. Student loans are gone. We don't have credit card debt. So yeah, we're absolutely there.
Oh my gosh, so many goals. And I know a lot goes into that. So that's what, like, when I think talking about finances publicly can be hard sometimes. I think that sometimes there's a lot of assumptions made. Right. But like it's something that everyone's path is going to look different. Like if you compared us, like technically I've had less debt than you, and like maybe I should have it paid off soon, like, so we just have different life journeys, different opportunities. But that's really, really cool that you've been able to like prioritize that. And I just feel like that has to be such a great feeling to like wake up and know that you own your house. Like that's so cool.
Yeah, it's still kind of sinking it. It is nice though because our expenses now are like astronomically low.
Yeah.
Which was our primary motivation behind doing it. If you talk to a lot of people, the decision to pay off a house early it's not like a straightforward decision. I think, when I say like I have student loans with a 9% interest rate, nobody would really argue with me and say you need to pay that off. Like that's high interest debt. A mortgage is different. There are very valid reasons to keep a mortgage. You can earn usually more than what you're paying for your mortgage interest in the marketplace if you invest well. So it's by no means like a choice that should be everyone's automatic or is correct for everyone. But for us, like we bought our house. I live in the Midwest. I live in Indiana. So A, housing costs are low. And then B, like we bought a dump of a foreclosure. Like my mother-in-law says it was like livable. I don't even count it as livable. Like it was just disgusting. Literally there were 30 dead mice in the wall in one spot. Like when we were remodeling our house, like it had sat empty for years. It was gross. So we've slowly like remodeled it and done all these things, but we live in a 3-bedroom ranch that we got a steal on. So for us to pay off our mortgage is a lot different than somebody paying off like a $300,000 loan of the mortgage.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of put it in perspective in that regard. Like, we knew because our mortgage was smaller, we could do it quickly and it wasn't going to delay other investing that long. But again, it's not the right decision for everyone. But I think really it was probably the right decision for us.
Yeah, and there's some give and take there. So, okay, so What are your thoughts on, and this is a question I get sometimes, like big purchases during PA school, like things like buying a car. I've even had people ask me, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts because I have my own, about using loans to pay for like a house payment, like to buy a house and use loans to pay for that.
Yeah, that is just not my style. First off, like, starting with a car, you're taking something that you're paying interest on, your student loans, and then you're using it to pay interest on something else that's actively depreciating. So like a car in particular is probably one of the worst things you can do with your student loan. That is sort of a financial black hole. There's no one that would really argue that a car is a great asset to begin with. So you're just combining insult to injury. I would highly recommend not doing that. While you're in PA school, if you need a car, I would buy like the lowest dollar vehicle that you can afford. I literally drove a $4,000 Chevy Cobalt the whole time, and for like the whole time I was paying off my student loans afterwards. You know what? It like drove me around. It was reliable and it worked. So I would say like definitely don't use your student loan money for a car. A house, still not really my style. I personally feel like you should try to be in a good financial situation when you buy a house. You know, ideally have an income, B, like a reasonable down payment, C, some money set aside because things break. Like, you know, our furnace broke within a few months. That was like $5,000 to repair. So while you're a student, you don't have an active income, you probably don't have substantial savings, I wouldn't think it would be a wise time to buy a house. There's always, you know, particular circumstances for different people, but for the majority, I would say it's probably a bad plan.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what, like we had a very close like friend who was in med school with my husband, and they were looking at doing that, and I was like, wait, have y'all run these numbers? Like, this just does not make sense to me. And that's why I think like that's where the numbers and interest and everything can get so confusing, for sure. But okay, so so like you were learning about finances and obviously like meeting your own goals. What influenced you to start like a blog and an Instagram account, and kind of take that leap?
Honestly, it was just realizing that almost every single one of my friends and everyone around me, like colleague-wise, was just in the same boat that I was in. And a lot of the resources available assume like a certain baseline knowledge, or they're not necessarily formatted in a way that's approachable for our generation. And I just felt like, you know, I've accumulated a decent knowledge base on this topic, and I felt like I could share it. So I kind of got on social, started this business, started doing one-on-one coaching, and then recently have done an online course. Realistically, the world's a virtual place now. You know, people are sheltered at home, and you know, not everybody wants to talk about money, like you said, like face-to-face with someone. Some people just want to take in knowledge, do things kind of in private, and not have to have that conversation or feel like embarrassed to tell all of your details to someone else. So that's been my latest thing, in addition to one-on-one coaching, is doing an online course.
Okay, I want to know a little bit more about that, because so you're not like a financial advisor, any of that. You are a PA. So what is the difference in like talking to someone with like one-on-one coaching versus like talking to a financial advisor? I've personally talked to a financial advisor and I didn't feel like I learned anything more than what I already knew, if that makes any sense. I feel like they just kind of told me like basically like step 1, step 2, step 3, that's it. And I was like, okay, well, like, but what do I do? Like, I don't know. So where does like a coaching, somebody who's like doing financial coaching, like what does that look like?
So like we had a financial advisor up until recently that we used for investing advice, and then ultimately we shifted to investing on our own. But in our conversations with him, his focus was, really truly like investing, investing approaches, retirement approaches, and that sort of thing. It wasn't like, let's talk about your whole financial picture. So that's sort of the difference between, at least in my experience, between a financial coach and a financial advisor. Like when I'm working with a client, it's literally like, let's go through all of your expenses. You know, why did you spend $1,000 last month at Whole Foods? We have to make a new plan. You know, it's those kind of things. And it's also just looking at like where your money is going, what your short-term and long-term goals are, and not necessarily investing advice of like, you should buy this fund or you should invest in this stock, which is sort of left to the formal like CFPs and financial advisors.
Okay, that makes sense. It sounds like there's also just like more accountability there of someone to help you kind of be like, check yourself on that one.
Right.
Okay, interesting. So who is like, are you specifically working with PAs? Like who is that helpful for?
A couple of my clients have been PAs or pharmacists, but plenty have had just any career.
Gotcha.
It has not been by any means limited to PAs, although I do think, you know, probably I'm most relatable to PAs because that's what I am, and we probably have a comparable income, maybe even comparable student loan debt burden, so our stories just generally kind of mesh.
Are very, like you can relate better. So yeah, that's interesting. Okay. So tell me about the online course.
Yes, so it is geared towards people that are just starting out on their financial journey. This is not like advanced investing or, you know, financial independence or anything along those lines. It's literally like, okay, I don't know where to begin with money. Just step by step. What are the things that you need to do? Like, what are the basic fundamentals that you need to understand and then implement in your life so that you can make progress? It's honestly would be perfect for like a late student or a new grad, especially someone with a new income that's really just not sure where to direct their money or how to get organized. This would definitely be a good place to start. It's 6 modules, it's all online, and it's self-paced. So you can kind of go through it at your own speed, go through all the different modules and activities at your own pace, and just sort of have the privacy of learning about this stuff at home without having to, again, tell anybody to get all your financial information.
Nice. Yeah, and that's something I think people like, that's hard to do is, you know, to lay it all out there and ask for feedback. Especially if you know you're spending $1,000 at Whole Foods and you don't really want to stop. Our Whole Foods shut down, so not a problem for me. And I'm honestly not that healthy. So awesome. Well, where can people kind of find you and follow along and send you all their questions?
Yeah, so I'm on social media at Thrive with Kristin, and then my website is thrivewithkristin.com. I'm also on Pinterest and Facebook, but honestly, I'm much more active on Instagram and on my website. So feel free to hop on there. I do a free email on Mondays. It's just like random tips, tricks. Sometimes it's about investing, sometimes it's about debt. But that is a free thing that comes out on Mondays. And then again, follow along on Instagram, and I would love to meet you, talk to you. DM me, whatever your questions are.